Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Today I'm playing around with a stencil, and one of the many reasons why I love stencils is that you can use them as they are designed, or you can take pieces and parts of them. So like with this one, the reflecting rainbow stencil that I created for over at StencilGirl Products, it can create an entire page of scallops. And the nice thing about doing this is I could fill the entire page, or I can just do part of the page. I could do just a little border of it. And then once you've got that done, then you can start adding color to it and you can change the entire look of it again. So lots of versatility, and let me show you how this is done. We're gonna mask off part of the stencil, and I'm using masking tape here, but it's stickier than what I need it to be. So what I'm doing is just putting it on a piece of clothing, and by doing that, it'll make the tape less sticky. Basically, it's picking up some of the loose fibers of the lint off of your clothing, and that's what's making it less sticky. On this one, I don't have a lot of lint on it, so what I'm gonna do is just press that tape down a couple of times to make it so it's sticky, but not super sticky. So like when I put it here on this piece of paper, it'll hold it in place, but it's not actually gonna adhere to it, so I'll be able to lift it up easily. I'm gonna stencil directly onto the tape. Not because I want it to look pretty or make tape, although you absolutely can do that. What I'm doing is creating the line, the guide, so I know where to cut the tape. Because I'm going to take this tape and stick it on the stencil. It's going to mask off the part of the stencil that I don't want to use. And by doing this, it's going to make it really fast to build the pattern once I've got the stencil masked off. So that's why this stenciling is very imprecise. It's very messy. I don't care. This is speedy stenciling because really all I want to know is where I want to cut that tape so I can easily put it onto the stencil. When I'm cutting the tape, I'm cutting just outside the stenciled area, so I can take that piece of tape and then position it in that spot on the stencil. Because what I really want to do is mask off any of the pattern that's near what I want to use. And by the way, if you're a super careful stenciler, then you may not have to do this. I am not a careful stenciler, so I definitely need to do this. But by just taking a couple of minutes here, it makes the next step go really, really quickly. Because I'm putting tape onto a stencil like this, if you use a super sticky tape, it's going to be a little bit harder to pull that tape off when you're all done. That's why I like using a tape that isn't very sticky. If you like using washi tape for something like this, that's a great tape to use for it. Now this tape happens to be a little bit wider than what I need to cover up the top part of the design. So I'm just going to cut a skinnier strip of it off here, and then I'm going to place it over any of the exposed design that I want to cover up. Now you can do this very carefully with precision, or you can do it the way I'm doing it, kind of fumbly and looking a little, well, messy. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter how you do this part, as long as you cover up whatever part of the stencil you don't want paint to go through. So yes, mine does not look glamorous. It looks a little fumbly, but it will get the job done. You've just seen me do that for the first row, so I just skipped ahead here to where the second row is all finished getting the cut pieces of masking tape on there. Then what I'm going to do is just take a full piece of tape there and put it on the back to mask off that area. Since I'm only going to be using 2 of these rows, I don't have to do anything carefully with that second piece of tape up there. Now, if by any chance there's an area that you didn't get carefully covered, that's where you just take another piece of tape and add it in if you see anywhere exposed where paint might come through where you don't want it to. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape at the bottom to finish masking that off. Now that the stencil's ready, it's time to create the paper mask. So that tape on the stencil makes it so I can just very loosely stencil. And the paper mask that I'm using here, well, you'll see how that makes the pattern really go quickly in the next step. By the way, the stenciling that I'm doing isn't perfect. It's not precise. I just need to know where to cut. So what I'm going to do is cut out the top of these arches, the top of these little rainbows. And as I'm doing it, my goal is to shave off just a little bit of the black. I do want to cut into that black just a little bit. Now, in a perfect world, I would do it exactly precisely, but I don't live there. If you do, awesome, but I don't. So I do the best that I can with this, and it will all work out just fine. But now the masks are ready. Now it's time to actually start building the pattern. I've got a piece of book text here that I'm going to build it on. And notice how I'm positioning that first set of little rainbows. That the bottom of the rainbow is not the bottom of the paper. I'm actually not going to use the entire rainbow each and every time. I'm just going to use part of it. And one of the perks of taking that time to put that tape onto the stencil to mask it off means when you're doing this part, you're not going to get any of that over stenciling. The paint is just going to go on those arches or on the rainbows. Now that that first row is done, I need to mask it off and protect it as I'm going to do the second row. And all I did was position that index card that I'd cut out on top of it to protect it. Now as I'm positioning the second row, I can actually see through the stencil and see where it's all going to line up, which makes it really nice. So it's not guessing, you can actually see where this thing's going to go. Now that I know it's where I want it, then I'm simply going to add that paint to create the second row of scallops. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, what fancy trick there is for getting that crisp stenciling, I'm going to share that with you a little bit later. Those of you with an eagle eye may have noticed that the tape on the stencil is not exactly the same as what I showed you earlier in the video. Or the paper index cards, the stenciling on them looks a little different than earlier in the video. And you might be wondering why? Why is there inconsistency here? What's going on? Well, what it is I didn't have the camera turned on when I thought I did when I was doing the earlier parts of this video. So after I finished, I went back and redid that for you so you'd know how to set that up. So if you want just a little scalloped edging, you stop at 2 rows. Or if you want more, you keep adding more. You can add as many as you want. Now, I've been having a fumbly finger kind of day and things keep moving around on me. And if that's ever happening to you, what you can do is put a little bit of tape on the back of it. Make those little tape circles, a little bit of washi tape or some leftover masking tape from doing the stencil. And that way it'll just help hold it in position. And speaking of position, when you're positioning the stencil for the next row, if you move it up or move it down, it changes the look of your scallop. So definitely experiment around, play with that to find the spot that you like the most. For me, I like it with this bit of overlap. It creates a little bit tighter of a scallop pattern, and that's the vibe that I'm liking right now. But when you're doing this, you can explore and play. Try moving it up a little bit or down a little bit. And of course, while you're doing it, don't forget to get tongue-tied like I just did. Okay, back to the stenciling. Once you've got a row done, you just repeat this process as many times as you want. So now that you've seen a few of them, it's the exact same thing to create a full page of them. So I've really sped up the camera here so you can see how those layers build, because it's the exact same process. Just rinse and repeat as many times as you want for as many rows as you want in your scallops. And if you want your scallops pointing the other direction, if you want them going down instead of up, simply turn that stencil around and your scallops can be at the top of the page, scalloping down. Now, is this the only way you can use a stencil? Absolutely not. This is the tip of the iceberg. And if you want to know more ways to use stencils, if you want to go deeper and really understand them, or if you just want to get more out of the stencils that you've got, then check out my online workshop, The Joy of Stenciling. And yep, there's a link down below for you in the description. The entire reason why I put masking tape on the stencil and why I created the masks is because I'm not a very precise person when I'm creating. And if that's the case, how am I getting crisp lines since I'm not a precise person? Well, there are 3 things that make that happen. One is, and this is the biggest one, is I'm using a thick paint. When you use a heavy body paint, things run underneath stencils less. It's easier to get crisp lines. The other thing is I'm using a small amount of paint. I haven't globbed a lot of it there on that cosmetic sponge. And then the third reason is when I'm stenciling, I'm going in an up and down motion. Now, once you've got the scallop pattern everywhere that you want it, what can you do with it? Well, you can leave it exactly the way it is, or you can color it in. So here I've got about a half page of the scallops, and I'm coloring them in with watercolors. What I really like about using watercolors is I don't have to be that precise with it, and it goes quickly. But that doesn't mean it's the only option you have. Colored pencil, markers, anything that you want to use in there, you absolutely can use to color it in. Now, each time I put a color on here, I really thought about just stopping and leaving it the way it was, because I like that look with just a couple of colors and the plain. But spoiler alert, this isn't going to shock you. The rainbow called to me and I ended up filling it all in with color. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about stenciling, is because I can just go and stencil some more scallop patterns and try it in different color combinations, different amounts of color, different mediums. So maybe I'll do colored pencils or markers for the next one. So while I'm finishing up getting the color on here, I'm going to talk a little bit about cleaning of the stencil. Now, because of this technique, it is easy to have paint build up on the stencil. So that's why when I'm done, I peel off the masking tape when I'm done playing with the stencil, and then I just toss it in some water to soak. Generally, when I'm tossing that stencil into the water, the paint is still just a little bit tacky. It's not completely dry. And so that means half an hour or so in the water, and sometimes it's a lot more because I forget I put it in there. But any of that paint will then just wash right off of it. But let's say the stencil doesn't make it into water for a day or two. What can you do to help make it easier to get the paint off of it? Some people swear by Murphy's oil soap or dishwasher detergent packets in the water. What I swear by is Citra Solv. I put some of that in the water and let the stencil soak in it, and that will loosen up any dried paint. Well, here we are at just about the end of today's play, and I want to say thank you for being here. I so appreciate you spending this time here. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've had fun, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I've got a new video out. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.